Welcome everyone to a brand new explainer. Today, we're taking a pretty fascinating journey back in time to crack open an ancient text known as the 10 Recitations Vinaya. Now I know what you might be thinking. It's incredibly easy to look at ancient monastic texts and assume they're just, well, dry, dusty lists of do's and don'ts, right? But if we look a bit closer, we find something entirely different. We are about to explore a living, breathing document of human psychology, conflict resolution, and real community management. Because it turns out managing hundreds of people living together thousands of years ago, yeah, it was just as messy and dramatic as it is today. Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly did an ancient spiritual community manage magical battles, false accusations, and the proper way to eat a mango? This right here perfectly highlights the wild contrast we're going to see today. Literally, 1 minute we'll be dealing with epic, supernatural drama that threatens to tear the whole community apart, and the very next we're deep into the completely relatable daily minutia of communal dining. So, let's start with the big stuff.
Section 1. Sangha Schism Crisis. Extremism versus the Middle Way.
And this brilliantly illustrates our first major crisis, which centered around a massive ideological clash between the Buddha and a monk named Devadatta. So Devadatta actually led a rebellion demanding 5 extreme, super strict rules. We're talking things like only wearing rag robes, never eating meat under any circumstances, and exclusively living outdoors. He basically argued this was the absolute only path to purity. But in response, the Buddha offered what we call the middle way, heavily favoring flexibility and moderation. He actually allowed lay robes, permitted pure meat, and allowed buildings. He essentially warned that Devadatta's rigid extremism would just completely destroy the community's harmony.
Which brings us to the number 14. You see, right in the wake of this schism, the text outlines precisely 14 specific ways to formally break a sangha, or a monastic community. We're looking at things like intentionally calling unlawful things lawful, or, blowing minor offenses way out of proportion just to sow division. This intense focus on structural order really shows us that this wasn't just some casual gathering of monks. No, it was a highly organized society with a very precise legal framework, all designed to protect its unity against internal subversion.
Moving right along to Section 2, the cost of miracles.
So, the ancient Indian landscape was widely seen as a place where the supernatural was entirely possible. But, as it turns out, having superpowers was actually a bit of a management nightmare. Case in point, winning back those 500 monks that Devadatta led away. The Buddha actually sent his top 2 disciples on a high-stakes rescue mission. Step 1. The monk Maudgalyana flies up into the sky and puts on this absolutely dazzling display of elemental magic, literally emitting water and fire from his body at the exact same time. It's a total shock and awe tactic just to grab their attention. Then, step 2, the monk Sariputra steps in, but he uses pure logic, preaching the Dharma to completely deconstruct Devadatta's arguments. And step 3, this incredible combo of supernatural display and logical reasoning actually works. The monks realize their error and peacefully return.
So the crucial point here is that while miracles could definitely be useful, they were also incredibly dangerous to the community's overall humility. Which leads us to the honestly hilarious yet very serious story of Pindola Bharadvaja. Get this. A wealthy layman hung a sandalwood bowl high up on a peg and basically challenged any holy man to fly up and grab it. Well, Pindola, clearly wanting to show off a bit, actually flew up and grabbed the thing. But when the Buddha found out, oh, he was furious. He essentially asked why on earth would you use superhuman powers for a cheap wooden bowl? Just for showing off his abilities to lay people to win a literal prize, Pindola earned strict exile from the Buddha. And that single incident of showing off led directly to some incredibly strict, highly practical regulations on monastic gear, specifically to prevent vanity. The rules immediately banned bowls made of gold, silver, glass, wood, and stone. Monks were only allowed to use the most practical, unassuming materials possible, basically just iron or clay. And what if a clay bowl broke? Well, the rules explicitly stated you had to patch it up and just keep using it. Absolutely no luxury allowed.
That brings us to Section 3, Micro Daily Rules, Health, Safety, and Hygiene.
Now we're shifting gears from epic magical battles to the intense micromanagement of hundreds of human beings just living together. Let's rapid fire through some of these bizarre yet highly specific grooming prohibitions. Monks were strictly forbidden from shaving body hair, wearing perfumes, painting their eyes, making earrings out of grass or wood, or even keeping their hair long and curly. Now you might be wondering, why these specific rules? Well, simply because the lay people were constantly complaining. They'd see the monks doing these things and complain that these supposedly ascetic folks were acting like vain kings, wealthy courtiers, or even just trendy locals. So every single rule here is essentially a direct response to an ancient public relations crisis.
Then we get into the really dramatic rules regarding medical emergencies and self-harm. The text actually tells of a monk who, struggling heavily with lust, literally cut off his own body parts. In another instance, a monk was bitten by a toxic snake hiding in a rotten log, and he chopped off his own finger just to stop the venom. Naturally, the Buddha was completely horrified by this extreme self-mutilation. So he laid down a strict, ironclad rule against self-harm and offered some surprisingly practical medical advice instead. He basically said, look, if you get bitten, just tie a tourniquet around the finger and squeeze the poison out. As the text so beautifully puts it, cut off greed, anger, and ignorance. Do not cut off your body parts.
And then we have what I personally like to call the mango protocols. So, a few greedy monks stumbled upon a tree belonging to King Bimbisara that produced mangoes year-round, and, well, they essentially ate all the king's premium fruit. This hugely embarrassing incident led to an entire, complex legal framework just about fruit consumption. Rule 1. Do not touch fruit until a layperson explicitly offers it. Rule 2. Never ever eat from the king's ever-bearing tree. And Rule 3, to ensure seeds aren't destroyed improperly, fruit actually has to be made pure using one of 5 specific methods, like, touching it with fire or a knife. It is honestly amazing how one single mango heist created so much legislation.
Interestingly, this text also reads a lot like an ancient occupational health and safety manual. Just consider the steps for building a bathhouse back then. At first, monks were literally just bathing in mud, so they were allowed to build brick seats. But then the fires were completely smoking them out, so they had to figure out how to install chimneys. And then the drainage holes were letting in scorpions and centipedes that were stinging the monks, so they had to actually invent and install protective grates over the drains. You really just have to marvel at the sheer logistical genius, and honestly the trial and error, required to keep a massive community clean and safe.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, Boycotts and Forgiveness.
We've seen exactly how they handled magical egos and bathhouse scorpions, but how did this community handle a genuine, severe crisis of justice? Well, it all started with a really devastating ancient cancel culture moment. A powerful layman, Mahanama Lajavi, is pressured and blackmailed into falsely accusing a completely pure, innocent monk named Dubba Malaputta of having an illicit affair with his wife. It was this totally baseless, malicious rumor specifically designed to ruin a pure practitioner's reputation. Obviously, the community had to react, but remember, they were sworn to absolute nonviolence. So what exactly do they do?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the truly ingenious solution they came up with, the overturned bowl, or fupo. This was a formal monastic boycott. By unanimous agreement, the entire community of monks and nuns would literally turn their alms bowls upside down whenever they passed this specific layman's household. They flat out refused to accept any food or offerings from him whatsoever. And it's just such a brilliant, entirely peaceful method of demanding accountability. They aren't attacking the layman at all. They are simply refusing to engage with him until justice is actually served.
And just look at the beautiful path to restoration this ultimately created. Step 1. Ananda, the Buddha's personal attendant, goes directly to the layman's house to personally deliver the boycott decree. Step 2. The social weight of this moral sanction is so incredibly heavy that the layman actually faints in remorse. And when he wakes up, he immediately goes straight to the Buddha, fully confesses his lie, and begs for forgiveness. And finally, step 3. Because the ultimate goal of these strict rules was always restorative justice and community healing, the Sangha formally forgives him. They perform the upright bowl ceremony, turning their bowls right back over, and the relationship is completely, entirely restored.
Which leaves us with a final, really important question. How can our modern communities balance strict boundaries with the capacity for total forgiveness? As we've seen today, the 10 recitations Vinaya isn't just some archaic list of restrictions. It's truly a masterclass in human nature. It shows us that yes, a community absolutely needs strict rules to survive human ego, whether we're talking about a magical show-off or a sneaky mango thief, but it equally needs a highly structured, guaranteed path for forgiveness and real redemption. So take a moment today to reflect on how this ancient blueprint for harmony might just apply to the teams, the families, and the communities that you are a part of right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.